You checked the locks before bed. Then you checked them again, just to be sure. A security system does the worrying for you now. An alarm that calls the police. A smoke detector that never sleeps. An emergency room 10 minutes away if anything goes wrong. You tucked your kids in and forgot about the danger entirely, because that's what modern safety lets you do. Now take all of that away. No alarm, no hospital, no guarantee that morning even comes. For most of human history, roughly half of all children born never lived to see adulthood. Keeping a family alive wasn't a precaution. It was a full-time war against the odds. What early communities did to beat those odds sounds almost impossible to us today. What did it actually take to keep children alive in the ancient world? Let's start with something that should be impossible. In the 1980s, a team of researchers walked into the Ituri forest in northeastern Zaire, what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo, to study a group of hunter-gatherers called the E. Psychologist Edward Tronick, along with Gilda Morelli and Steve Wynn, wanted to answer one question. How do you raise a baby with no hospital, no crib, no formula, and no safety net for 1,000 miles in any direction? What they found broke every assumption they walked in with. No incubators. No pediatricians. No clean water on tap. No way to call for help if something went wrong in the middle of the night. Fertility among the E was brutally low. The average woman had fewer than 3 children in her entire life. Mortality ran high at every age, not just infancy. A single missed meal or a sudden infection posed an existential threat to an infant's fragile life. By every modern measure, an EFI infant should have been one of the most vulnerable human beings on the planet. And yet, the researchers clocked something strange. 5-month-old babies were in physical contact with another human being for 96% of their waking hours. Not occasionally held. Not checked on. In contact. Almost constantly. These infants were rarely, if ever, set down on the ground alone. And the person holding them kept changing mother, then an aunt, then an older sibling, then a woman who wasn't related to the child at all. The baby was never raised by one person. The baby was raised by the entire camp. This wasn't chaos, it was a system. A mother who needed to forage for food could hand her infant to another woman without a second thought, because that woman had done it 100 times before and would do it 100 times again. A crying child had a dozen sets of ears listening for it, not one. A dangerous moment of fire too close, a stranger too near. A fever climbing too fast had a dozen adults positioned to notice, not a single exhausted parent. Anthropologists have a name for this now. Cooperative breeding, or alloparenting. It's the observation that human beings are profoundly wired to raise children as an interconnected community rather than as an isolated pair. While many solitary animals guard their young obsessively and rarely share the burden, human communities thrive on shared responsibility. The math simply demanded it. A human child takes over a decade to become self-sufficient, navigating the harsh ancient wilderness while foraging, evading threats, and healing from childbirth was an overwhelming burden for a single mother to carry alone. So she didn't have to. Parenting didn't start as 2 exhausted people in a house, hoping nothing goes wrong before morning. It started as a village passing a child from arm to arm, so that no single moment of exhaustion, distraction, or unforeseen hardship could easily overwhelm a child's safety. The tribe was the ultimate safety net. Now, some of you are thinking, fine, that's the IA today. But how do we know this wasn't just a modern adaptation? How do we know cooperative care actually goes back deep into our ancient past? Fair question. The answer isn't in a journal. It's carved directly into the bones of an ancient skeleton. In 1957, archaeologist Ralph Selecki was excavating Shanidar cave in the Zagros Mountains of northern Iraq when he uncovered the remains of an ancient man, now catalogued as Shanidar I. What his bones revealed stopped researchers cold. As a young man, he'd taken a crushing blow to the skull that likely blinded him in one eye. His right arm had been amputated at the elbow, leaving the bone withered from decades of disuse. He walked with a severe limp from a healed fracture in his foot. And late in life, bony growths in his ear canals left him almost completely deaf. Any one of these injuries should have ended him. A blind, one-armed, limping man with no hearing has no business surviving as an ancient hunter-gatherer. He can't track prey, can't hear a predator approaching, can't defend himself. And yet Shanidar I lived to be somewhere between 35 and 45 years old, elderly for that harsh era. He didn't survive on individual skill alone. He survived because other people fed him, walked beside him, and watched for danger he could no longer see or hear. Not for months. For decades. This wasn't just a recent cultural phenomenon. This was an ancient community. The instinct to carry the vulnerable wasn't invented by modern civilization. It has been woven into the fabric of human society from the very beginning. In the 1980s, anthropologist Kristen Hawkes was living with the Hadza, hunter-gatherers in northern Tanzania, when she noticed something odd. Young children who couldn't yet dig their own food were being fed by older women, not their mothers, but their grandmothers. She started tracking it. The pattern held. A child's growth tracked their mother's foraging, until the mother had another baby. From that point on, the child's weight gain tracked a grandmother's foraging instead. This is a profoundly unique human trait. Many animals in the wild rarely live far past their fertile years at all. Human women, uniquely, can live decades past menopause, and Hawkes argued this is exactly why. A grandmother who stops having her own children can instead keep her grandchildren alive, freeing her daughter to have the next one sooner. Longevity itself functions as a brilliant caregiving strategy. Nearly 8,000 kilometers away, in the rainforests of the Congo Basin, anthropologist Barry Hewlett spent years tracking Aka fathers hunter-gatherers who net hunt and gather honey deep in the forest. His data showed something no other studied culture on Earth matched. Aka fathers were within arm's reach of their infants, 47% of their waking hours, not glancing over occasionally, holding, carrying, soothing, nearly half the day, every day, not for status, not for tradition, for the simple mathematics of keeping a fragile creature alive in a place with no medicine and no margin for error. And the pattern shows up in the numbers too. Among the Ache of eastern Paraguay, researchers Kim Hill and Magdalena Hurtado tracked child survival across generations and found something striking. Children supported by more than one adult male provider were significantly more likely to survive to age 15 than children supported by only one. More caregivers wasn't just a cultural preference. It was a measurable survival advantage. Iraq, Tanzania, the Congo Basin, Paraguay. 4 continents, separated by vast expanses of time, and the same law written into every one of them. A child guarded by one exhausted adult is a child one bad day from disaster. A child guarded by many is a child who can survive a bad day, a bad month, even a body that no longer works. Humanity didn't just outsmart its threats. It outcooperated its own physical fragility. Picture a single day in that ancient camp, deep in our early history. You wake before sunrise, and the first thing that happens to you as an infant isn't a cry, answered by one tired parent. It's a dozen half-open eyes, already checking where you are. By mid-morning, your mother straps you against her body and walks into the forest to forage. An hour in, her arms tire. She doesn't stop. She simply hands you to the nearest woman, who takes you without breaking stride. This isn't kindness in the modern sense. No thank you, no fuss. It's routine, the same as passing a digging stick. Our bodies are remarkably wired for all of this. Constant skin contact keeps an infant's temperature stable, the heart rate steady, and stress hormones low. Researchers call it contact comfort. And without it, cortisol climbs dangerously fast. Multiple caregivers meant that regulation never lapsed, even when one adult was exhausted or gone. By afternoon, an older sibling carries you while the adults work. By evening, you're passed to your grandmother while your mother nurses a younger child. Every transfer is a small act of insurance one. More person who knows your cry, your fevers, your habits. Then the sun dopes and the camp gathers around the fire. This is where the real vulnerability begins. The hours when a lone predator or a sudden illness poses a severe threat to the community. Here's the harsh reality. For most of our ancient history, roughly half of all children born never reached adulthood. Not because parents cared less, because one pair of hands was never enough. Humanity endured through the F-woman who took a stranger's infant without hesitation. It endured through the ancient tribe that carried Shanidar one, blind and one-armed, for decades. It endured through the Hadza grandmother who kept foraging long past her own fertility, and through the Aka father, arms full nearly half his waking hours. The next time you check the locks before bed, you're completing something far older than steel. The alarm system, the smoke detector, the ER 10 minutes away, these are just modern ways of practicing the care we are naturally wired to provide. You didn't invent the drive to protect. You inherited it. Keeping a family alive was never a solo act. It was never supposed to be. Humanity didn't endure because one parent was strong enough. It endured because no one ever had to be. So check the locks if it helps you sleep. But know what you're really doing adding. One more link to a chain of hands that has passed children from arm to arm across countless generations, ensuring that no one ever had to face the harshness of the world alone.